Hello and welcome back to the next One Piece review and discussion. We are here with the chapter we have been waiting for a very, very long time. The setup has been here right throughout the story, and we are finally arriving at God Valley and getting to see what actually happened and how it all unfolded. There are a lot more players, people showing up on this island than we even initially thought were here. So it is very, very cool to see who was here to witness the incident at God Valley. So, without further ado, chapter 1160, the God Valley incident. So we are kicking things off here right away. Before we do have Yamato's cover story, which is her return to the flower capital. We get like a nice overview of the flower capital. Obviously, they have done their return journey now and have come back. There's probably only one or two more to this cover story, I guess, in terms of what else we need to see. But who knows what Oda will decide to do next, whether Yamato does decide to end up leaving at the end to make her way, having heard all this commotion now at Elbaf or even Egghead. It's certainly going to be an interesting one. But nevertheless, we have other things to discuss. So, last we had left off, there was a great storm, and Shaki had disappeared, or well, had been kidnapped from Hachinosu, so from Pirate Island, and it seems that Wang Ji was up to his scheming and was a part to play in Don Marlowe being killed, many other pirates as well, but mainly the Jewel of the Sea, Shaki, was captured and taken. And for a long time, the seas were in like this perilous sort of state. Everyone was like distraught over losing Shaki. Where could she have gone? And a year later, we find out that she's being offered as one, if not the main prize, during the Celestial Dragons Hunt game at God Valley. Now, the reason everyone knows this is because Ginny, as we've known from Kuma's backstory, but we also see it as a refresher last chapter, gave out the information working on the slave ship, and she was able to relay information out to the world of all the prizes, so like the devil fruits, Shaki, and what was actually happening at God Valley. And that led like Morgans to want to spread the news because he was like trying to get it out of Cypher Pole. Obviously, then Rogers and the Rocks Pirates all were witness and heard about what was happening. They all mobilized. You know, they were really keen on like saving Shaki, and it was in that where we go to God Valley and we're seeing the Marines starting to take over and set up, and we see a very young dragon, like 17, 18-year-old dragon, who is questioning the methods here. Like, is this necessary? Like, these are just innocent people, and they're using like tranquilizers and sleep gas to incapacitate people so that they can be used as rabbits in the game. So no one here is being killed yet, but Dragon is already like uneasy and trying to reel the consequences of what is happening, and he's not a big fan. But what is very interesting is he goes through, and it's still like he's just a young marine. He's only just starting, and he starts to tranquilize a few people. So he's currently like morally weighing up internally, like what is his actions actually doing? Like, why is he here? What does he want to do? He joined the Marines to protect and save people. So we see Rox's crew on the way, and obviously, of all the ships he runs into, it is indeed Harold's. They have what could be their final confrontation. And it didn't go the way everyone was going to assume. Certainly Cypher Paul, because there were government ships, surveillance ships around, and even Harold pointed out, like, his hands are tied to a degree. He can't just let him past, because of their history. There are Marines watching. And instead, Rox asks Harold to sit to one side so that they can share a glass and have a quiet discussion. And Rox, in this moment, decides to trust Harold implicitly with information that he has probably not told anyone. No one on his crew, no one besides Rox himself, knew this fact until he told it to Harold. Rox is a member of the Davy clan. His name is Davy D. Zebek. And his home, where his wife and currently child teach, their home was God Valley. And Rox was like, that was my homeland. I thought my family would be safe there. And then I read that that's where the games are being held. That's where Shaki is, It's a cruel twist of fate. But he's going there to save his wife and child. He's acting tough and encouraging everyone because they're all riled up to save Shaki. He has got this whole completely different motive. It's a whole other side of Rox we never saw. And he knew, he was like, look, I don't see my hand being well dealt when I get to this island. He doesn't see a good way out of this. He just wants to save his wife and kid. And Harold is empathising with him. Not only is he part of a clan that was hated by the world government and has been brandished, as a villain throughout centuries, he's trying to do good, but the consequences of his actions are now catching up to him. So in the end, they pretend fight. There's ship sets on fire and there's a breakout, but Harold lets him escape, most likely, so that he can get to his wife and kid. The finale of last chapter was Shaki and the devil fruit or the chests being put on display, and the announcement that part of the rare rabbits, as much as there are buccaneers like we saw in Kuma's backstory, got announced, there are also members of the Davy clan amongst the rabbits. And we see Teach is petrified and his mother's there, and we end with Dragon following a blood trail to find Shanks's mother, who had been killed earlier on, or at least we thought being killed, because she was stabbed by Garland himself, the man she had probably fell in love with to have Shanks and Shamrock. She had been killed by him, and instead she was pleading with Dragon, a very young Dragon, to say, can you save my children? I don't want him to get a hold of them. So there is a whole different sort of level of play in our Dragon's trying to save Shanks and Shamrock. So cool. So we pick up this chapter with the absolute thunderous crowd of the Celestial Dragons absolutely admonishing the Davy clan, completely just loathing them. And it is horrible to see that they have such hatred towards a certain group of people, and they are talking about their whole lineage, the history of the Davy clan is it just needs to go, it needs to be exterminated. And it is Garland and Saturn who are watching on, and Saturn's this is quite defiant, we're actually quite surprised, well done, Garland. And he's oh, well, it was merely just fate that brought us here, but it's a great catch type of thing. And we can see poor Teach terrified on stage with like other members of the Davy clan being held by what we assume is his mother. We do see a shot of her, and we can see the monstrous depiction of these celestial dragons trying to like claw and like throw knives at like Teach and his like family. It is crazy. But we do go back to Dragon, who is like trying to nurse this woman. We never get to see her face, but he's trying to nurse her, and she's like, "Look, I'm done here. Like, there's no point saving me. I just want you to save my kids. You know, I just don't want him to get a hold of them. Please look after them." And she falls. She hits the ground. She's out, and we can see Dragon running away, internalizing and saying, you know, like, you and your kids may just be strangers, but I am going to help. You know, that's as much as I can do. Like, that's why I joined the Marines type ideals. Like, he's like, I've got no business being here if I can't even do that much. And we see the rest of the sort of spiel from the Celestial Dragons carries on, where we saw in Kuma's, where he's like, there's the 13 super rare rabbits, and we see a shot of Kuma, and we see that they get that hour to run and try and escape. And it is that like sort of fool's depiction of it all, where they think they can win. They just have to survive the 3 weeks, you know, we can just hide out, we can survive. And the hunt begins, and it is a massacre. Families, women, children, men, all chained, cuffed, running for their lives, and are just being mowed down by celestial dragons. And we can see transponder snails are relaying all of this to the holy land of Marijor, where the other sort of families are watching on, betting on which family is going to win, or which house is going to win in the lead, because it's all points scored. And it is mad because they're like, oh, like Figurlins are in the lead at the minute, but you know, the Bavettas and the Manmayas are on their heels, you know, they're closing in. We've got reference to House Shepherd for the clan contest being the favourite, but as a solo individual, Gunko seems to have quite a favourite. So we can see that how they're scoring it is not only house or clan based, but for individual points scored as well. So we can see everyone is enjoying Garland, you know, just mowing people down, but he's doing it in such a flaunting way that the Celestial Dragon, the women anyway of the Celestial Dragons, are like swooning over him. And we do see a very young now God's Knight Gunko here, who is a part of House Manmaya, absolutely using her arrow fruit to just kill like 3 people. And she is just remorseless, just not holding back. And we jump around a lot because we're seeing like all the action taking place, and we can see Shaki's like confined in a cage. People are like, wow, I think Garland's one lucky guy to, you know, claim her as his wife, you know. Must be great. And she is like shaking, like she's like not saying anything in this cell, but she is like clearly distraught in this situation. We can see Summer kicking a tree, spotting a child, being like, oh, it's alright, you know, there's a cushion for you to fall down on here, you know, it's okay now. And it is just a cushion of thorns he's ready to let the kid jump into. And we can see a man run up shouting, you know, like, leave his kid alone. And he's like, oh, how touching, like a child. Clearly Summer just deals with the dad. And what we see is Dragon returning to his platoon, his like squad, and all of them have been killed. And he was like, I thought I could save those kids. I thought I could help her and defy the Celestial Dragons, but everyone got executed. And we can see back on the Marine ship, they're like, where's Dragon? You know, where's he got up to? Like, this is crazy. Oh, is everyone like present here? And this guy is like, oh yeah, everyone's here. And he's still like in a thought Bubble being like, what's Dragon got up to with these kids? Like, why is he doing this? So we can see Dragon, who has been running around God Valley now, trying to save these two kids, spots Ivankov, Ginny, and Kuma, and like those slaves that we saw in the backstory, having that moment where Ivankov is saying about surviving and the game's rigged. All we have to do is escape God Valley, and they have the plan with a devil fruit. And it is that moment we see, but from Dragon's perspective. So Dragon was there watching Ivankov give this speech, and we see sights trained on Kuma, ready to shoot, and Dragon shoots a celestial dragon. Like father, like son, this celestial dragon was ready to shoot a prized Kuma. He was so happy with himself, and then all of a sudden Dragon just shoots him and puts him down. And that is like so good, like roughly the same age that Luffy was when he punched Charlos. Like, that is crazy. So Dragon is certainly seeing the crueler side of the world government, and is being exposed to what he will soon set up as the Revolutionary Army. So we see the announcement that Rox and his crew have arrived, and we get a new, again, double page spread of the Rox crew. We had it way back, gosh, like 1090 something was when the brief Kuma backstory happened to God Valley. And we saw the Rox crew appear, but Rox wasn't there. We now get that same double spread introduction, but now Rox is in the centre of all of, the crew. And we can see that they're all talking about, the devil fruits, Shaki, what actually is here is treasure. And Rox is like, right, look, we don't get on, but for this one time, I don't want any belly aching. I don't want any complaining. We work together. We get this done. We don't turn on each other, and we can split the bounty after. There's too much here going on, and he's like uniting them. He's like, right, I'm done. Like, no messing around this time. And they all have got like this sort of infighting joke now of like being like, well, how are we gonna determine who Shaki wants? And it's like, well, obvious it's whoever saves her. So they're all like kicking off now, and they're all riled up, trying to save Shaki, but we know Rox is obviously going to do something different. We then see that the young dragon has got bundled up Shanks and Shamrock as he's rushing around. We can see the celestial dragons are now in a panic. Dragons using this to sort of avert all the marines and all the celestial dragons and save these two kids, who, by the way, aren't complaining, aren't crying, aren't like reacting to all out warfare around them. They are like, it is a miracle, Dragon says. And we can see that people are freaking more now, because not only is the Rox crew made landfall, but so has the Roger pirates, and they get their spread. They're all charging. They're here to save Shaki. We focus on stealing that treasure. No one's going to stand a chance. And then Roger gets trampled by his crew. Now, great joke nonetheless, but I'm confused now where Oda's going with this. We saw it happen briefly a few chapters now. When Roger's being depicted in the story during the past, the start of the story, a few like highlights, and then specifically Odin's backstory, Roger was depicted as like quite a very strong wielding individual. He uses Conqueror's haki, we saw those attacks with Whitebeard, like he's strong. More recent times, he's more of like a buggy character. Like, he's ended up in these random situations and somehow surviving. Like, he wasn't able to really defeat anyone. he's been trampled by his own crew. Like, I assume he's going to be fine and he gets up, and we know there's going to be a certain moment with him, Garp, and Rox, because we know that's what the story says. But whether that is the case now, because he's currently being trampled, like, could we imagine if it's like, oh, Roger just is now out, he's passed out for the fight. He doesn't actually do anything at God Valley. Like, I assume it is just for the joke, but what if, you know, he's not being depicted as the strong wielding, you know, pirate king that we've seen in the past. He's now this like sort of boyish man who's like having a bit of fun and, you know, getting trampled by his crew. So we don't know if he's going to get up from this. I assume he will, but we do indeed see a new final spread. We've had 3 big spreads so far of crews, but this one is cool because it is the Knights of God. Yes, the God's Knights, but that's such a cool title, the Knights of God. And we see some new individuals. So we can see some of the ones we know of. We know of Summer, we know of Figurland. We've seen a few before. So there's the girl from the Manmeyer family who's got like that hat and like symbols on it, and she wields a gun. We can see the dude with like the skull mask who looks very reminiscent to what Rode was wearing during the start of Elbaf. That sort of like deer skull setup. But we see a few new individuals that weren't like present or were kind of highlighted. There is a massive Yeti dude with like wings in the background. There is like a really tall, lanky woman with like this like white and black hair and like smoking. She's got glasses on. Really tall and formidable. Kind of gives Killingham vibes, like whether they're related from the same family maybe, but looks really intimidating. And then next to Figurland we see a sort of holy knight adorned woman with like this sort of large like claymore sword wielding, just fairly simple. But we see the God's Knights have rallied. Everyone is now in a huge panic, and the pirates are just decimating through all these marines. They're trying to protect the celestial dragons, but to no avail. And then we round off the chapter with a cannonball being thrown at the island to blow away many of the pirates here, just the lackeys of the crews. And we look over, and even Rox and Roger, so we do see Roger is fine here, both look over and see Garp, cannonball in hand, ready to throw another one, arriving and being like, I'm not going to just stand and watch you just like dice up all of these poor troops, you know, that's not who I am. I'm here now. And we can see Garp's fleet gets his introduction, like his crew. We see Bogan off to the side, like I can't wait to see what he does. But we see it is finally happening. The legends have assembled, and it will be next chapter that we find out what actually happened. And this is crazy because I did see a joke the other week. Is Loki still telling this story? Like I said this a while ago, is Loki still just telling this story to everyone? Like, all this information, or is it just for us to know what happened? But there is a break next week, which is a shame. We've got a whole 2 weeks now before we're going to find out what else happens at God Valley. But it is so cool to see. This is such a good chapter because it's finally answering a lot of what we've been waiting to see to do with God Valley. And who is there? You know, Dragon is the one who saves Shanks and Shamrock currently. Like, what's going to happen? Because we know ultimately it's going to end up with Shanks in one of the treasure chests to, you know, for Roger to find. So whether, you know, Dragon's devil fruit that we know Dragon's got is in one of the chests, so Dragon eats that devil fruit and puts Shanks in the chest, so then Dragon can do all cool shit with his, devil fruit now. It could happen, and it's likely to happen. This is the one place where if there's mythical fruits, we know Kaido gets his fruit here. There's not to say that Dragon's cool, god of the wind, sea, sky, whatever it's going to be, is in one of those chests as well. They're all mythical, legendary fruits. So I'm very interested to see how it plays out. But nevertheless, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you thought of this chapter, and I will see you guys next time.